everybody. Glad you can make it. Good to see you here. Okay, so we'll do our usual connection before content first. We'll go through our CCL values, mission, all that. So I think everybody pretty much knows it by now. Thank you very much, Peter, for being here. Look forward to your presentation. So we'll have like a 10-minute or so presentation, and then I don't know what we allocated, something like 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, 20 minutes plus
20.
I have a feeling that it's going to run much longer than 10 minutes.
Okay, so 20 minutes for presentation.
Those who know me know that I am not brief on my words.
Right, that's why I was already trying to cut it back to 10 in hopes that it would only go 20. But anyways, no. So let's see, we'll have some highlights, CCL highlights, lobby week highlights, well, lobby weeks, I guess. Some updates, and both national and local. So, okay, so starting it off with connection before content. Question for everybody: what's your special wish for the holidays? So I'll go here. My special wish is to actually see carbon cashback get passed and become law. So you can't take that, Doug. You have to come up with your own. So feel free to put it in the chat, and I guess it's my job to read them out. So
my special wish is not to be the sheriff, and the other thing is I want to go and swim with the manta rays in Kona with Keith this weekend. That's my special wish.
That is an absolutely magical experience. It's just, wow.
Yeah, that's what Keith keeps telling me.
So what's stopping you, Ron?
Well, just, I don't know. Well, I'm in Volcano Village. That it's hard from here. Yeah, the mantas don't come up this high.
You have a car, right?
Well, yeah, and we're going over to join Keith on the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So may your wish come true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish for calm seas should we board that boat.
Oh, snow on Mauna Kea.
Oh, very nice. Well, two for peace on earth. May that become a reality. So, oh, Virginia going for the whole enchilada there, huh?
Might as well.
Carbon cashback and all of our
others, which is actually 5 if you, since I already said carbon cashback.
I'll support that. That sounds good. More rain, yeah. If it could stay outside of our house, I would appreciate that. But whatever.
That sounds like a personal problem, Paul.
We'll send some over to you. We have plenty.
Yeah, it's nice to share.
Send you a few buckets from my house.
Well, this year it has. I've got my weather station, and we're on the glide path to the end of the year. We are 50% below normal.
Oh,
which is massive.
Yeah,
that is everywhere on the island.
Well, at my house.
At your house.
Well, you're making that your personal problem.
But I have neighbors, and they have similar weather.
Oh, okay.
It's
been very dry here on the Hilo side. I mean, known for being one of the wettest towns or cities, right? So it's been dry, and then down in Puna, many households rely on catchment systems.
Oh.
So when it's dry like this, they're having to buy water, and that could be several $100s a pop. So we wish for rain.
Yeah.
Oh,
here in the north end of the Hawaii Island, where we are here in Waimea, we're in severe drought.
And all
class 3 drought.
all this makes me feel very guilty because we're getting all the rain here in the Kona coffee belt.
Well, we could send some from the other end of the island chain.
Oh, what a difference.
Oh, okay. Anything else, or shall we move along.
Amen.
Welcome, Jamin.
Jamin's here. Great, Jamin.
I know, Jamin, you wish for more funding for the East-West Center and some stability there. So
we got a little bit. So yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Oh,
Glad to hear
good news. And you ran in the wet marathon? We were just talking about rain.
Yeah, I survived the marathon, I would say.
I
didn't do a lot of running, but
yeah, because you don't want to slip and
yeah, it was raining a lot, which added to the excitement, I guess.
Yeah.
Congratulations on finishing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So who we are, Ruth, you want to take it away?
I certainly do.
Thank you.
So these are our core values, which guide our staff and volunteers along the way. And I would like to focus, since this is a holiday season, on relationships. Like we are looking at all our relationships with friends and family. And this is something that CCL does too. So relationships, we take the most generous approach to other people as possible. Appreciation, gratitude, and respect. We listen, we work to find common ground, and we endeavor to understand our own biases. We are honest and firm. Right, guys?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. We know that there is a place for protest, but our CCL approach is to build consensus, which we believe will bring enduring change. That's why elected officials and their staff, no matter what their politics, say they are happy to see us and mean it. Thank you. I will now pass it on.
Just one. Sorry, then just interrupt. Thanks very much, Ruth. This is very appropriate, the one you chose, given CCL's kind of new direction for 2026, which is building upon relationships. So thanks for sharing that one.
So CCL's mission is to create the political will for a livable world by empowering individuals to experience breakthroughs and in exercising their personal and political power.
Yeah.
So see, Peter, you're well on your way with your lobby meetings. Well, excellent. Ron?
Yeah, so this is 4 areas which encompass our policy. And as Paul said earlier, if we had a magic wand and we wanted to choose one, it would be the one on the top left, which is carbon cashback, also known as the Energy Innovation Act or carbon fee and dividend. And let me just highlight why that's such a wonderful policy if and when we get it passed. There's several attributes. It helps get us to net zero by 2050, provides affordable clean energy nationwide, puts money in people's pockets, saves lives by reducing particulate matter air pollution. It's good for business, provides good clean energy careers, it's revenue neutral, and it does not grow big government. How in the heck can one bill do all of that good stuff, you ask? Well, if you imagine a 3-legged stool or a 3-legged tripod, fossil fuel companies pay a fee into a trust fund. That's number 1 leg. And number 2, the trust fund is transparent and it returns the revenue to U.S. individuals and families on an equal per person basis. That's number 2 leg. And number 3, a border adjustment levels the playing field and penalizes imports of dirty carbon intensive goods and gives U.S. exporters who have cleaner carbon intensive goods a credit. So that's why we like the Energy Innovation Act. And then it's not likely to get passed this year or next year. So we have other things like we support and defend the Inflation Reduction Act, electrifying America's buildings on the top right, and we support the Fix Our Forest Act on the bottom left, and we support clean energy permitting reform for new energy sources and for new energy transmission. That's the one on the bottom right. So there's our policy in a nutshell right there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Welcome, Josh. You've doubled the Maui contingent. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Well, speaking to clean energy reform and permitting reform, our guest is Peter Sternlicht, a dear friend and colleague. Peter's on the board of Sustainable Energy Hawaii. Sustainable Energy Hawaii is where we view things from the Hawaii perspective. And we had an opportunity to collaborate with the geographic. Sorry, I'm.
Are you talking about like the Geological Survey of Finland?
Thank you. Geological Survey of Finland and SEH produced a report where we looked at what would it take to electrify Hawaii's economy. And I'll put the link to that report in the chat, and people can ask questions. While Peter will put questions in the chat, so when we get to Q&A, Peter can answer those. Peter, it's all yours.
So my presentation today will in part look at the report Sustainable Energy Hawaii, co-authored with Dr. Simon Michel and the Geological Survey of Finland. And in part, we're going to look at the resource-based practicalities of emissions mitigation and the policy that we have to do that in Hawaii. So the report we did was 3 years in the making. It was really born out of a combined understanding that the use of fossil fuels is the major contributing factor to our changing climate. And at the same time, it's also a finite resource that has to be replaced due to demand and flow rate considerations, even though they are what powers the global economy. Adapting to both considerations fell along the same timeline, or approximately 2050, to minimize the most destructive impacts. From there, we asked the question, what would it take to phase out the use of fossil fuels in Hawaii? And by extension, what would it take to electrify the Hawaiian economy with emissions-free energy systems? In other words, how many solar panels, wind turbines, battery storage systems, geothermal plants, or even nuclear reactors would it take to enable the same amount of work as we do within our current economy, or as you'll see in a few minutes, the baseline year that we used, which was 2019. Anyhow, so what we discovered is that pretty much like everything else, it's way more complicated than you might think at first blush. Interestingly enough, another question that evolved as we evaluated the data, which is, has the rationale underpinning our emissions policy, RPS 2045 and other mandates, withstood the test of time? Is that still the right policy track for Hawaii, given what we now know? Has the rationale underpinning our emissions policy, RPS 2045, withstood the test of time? Is that still the right policy track for Hawaii, given what we know now and understand? And we didn't know when we first adopted climate mitigation policy nearly 20 years ago. So the question is, will eliminating emissions here in Hawaii prepare us for the impacts of climate change when the rest of the world is still conducting business as usual and global emissions are still increasing? Would we choose the same mitigation policy we have on the books today, or would we instead reframe it as an adaptation policy? What are the differences between the two? And this is for me, this is a very important question. So I think it's safe to say some of the tactics would be the same, like with the renewable energy system, but I'd suggest that the scope of our aspiration would be focused more as self-sufficiency than showing the world that we know how it can be done. That might emphasize systems that have longer life, the use of energy systems that have longer life cycles than those we're focused on today. And would we think more along long-term sustainability, or stay focused on near-term financial costs, which is the basis on which we're choosing certain systems? So back to climate. We all know that climate change is a global predicament, which is different than it being a problem that can be solved. There are a lot of interconnected and interdependent reasons for our changing climate. So substantially all of them are human in their origin. And that's the essence of the problem. When climate is discussed in strategic planning meetings, phasing out the use of fossil fuels is typically presented in terms of reducing carbon emissions as a climate change mitigation tactic. Taking that tactic to fulfillment in turn requires phasing out most of our current transportation and electricity generation systems and replacing them with something else, and doing so on a global level. However, when analyzed in detail, that replacement may not be able to deliver the same amount of energy at the same scale or in the forms that support civilization as we know it today. That defines this as a predicament, something rarely explored in polite circles. If and when the global we decide on an approach towards outcome management, it will require coordinated worldwide action seeking, and this is important, an acceptable economic outcome. Again, to be clear, this is a predicament, not a problem. Predicaments have outcomes. How we engineer those outcomes will make a difference. Will make all the difference. So collectively, the majority of us, and that's the global we, want to keep living the way we are. Collectively, the majority of us are not incentivized to make changes unless they're forced upon us. With regard to phasing out the use of fossil fuels, we saw efforts that started with COP1, the Conference of Parties, in 1995. From there, a growing environmental preservation movement has been competing against the relentless drive towards continuous economic growth, led by both big corporations and governments around the world. Hawaii in 2015 was the first state that committed to a 100% renewable portfolio standard by 2045. And so I got curious and decided to look and see if there was again, climate being a global issue, I wanted to see if there was any shift in primary energy consumption on a global level. And so what I did, the chart that you're looking at here, is I took data and I categorized fossil and non-fossil fuel consumption and determined a ratio between the two. The ratio was 77% fossil fuels and 23% non-fossil. I can go through I think you can see pretty well what the components are. So I'm not going to necessarily go list them. But if you fast forward 25 years and you take what you find is that the relationship between fossil and non-fossil fuels globally has shifted less than 1%, while we are consuming 52% more. And the net result of that is that emissions, climate change, all of that is moving in the wrong direction. This is the data. This is what it shows. And the potential takeaways relative to Hawaii is that there is not a single nation or state that can mitigate global climate change on its own. I would say that at the point Hawaii is on a very real and practical analytical conclusions basis, currently considering LNG as a fuel for power generation on Oahu, our ability to claim that we are showing the world might be in question. So that leads me to ask the question: should Hawaii's public policies reflect this reality? And that's something that we all have to decide. Back to the story about how this report came about. So in 2021, Simon Michaud, whose picture you see here, is a colleague of mine. He published a report for the Geological Survey of Finland examining how much electrical power would be required to replace fossil fuels on a global basis, and by extension, what the delta might be between the raw materials supply chain would be and satisfying an end-use end-use demand within a particular amount of time. So it modeled the electrification of global economic activity with a focus on renewable power generation capacity, paying particular focus to the likelihood that technology metals such as copper, lithium, manganese, cobalt, nickel, etc., could scale rapidly enough to build and deploy those generation systems within a reasonable amount of time, for instance, by 2050. So the purpose in performing that type of exercise can, in addition to the data, it can provide a solid base for crafting public policy. And therefore, by extension, that report was a policy document in addition to being a data-centric analytical document. It was clear at the time that if we could produce a report that were similar to that to examine Hawaii's economy, its energy consumption, and model what would be needed to deliver the same economic output, but without the direct use of fossil fuels, we would have our own references within which to evaluate our existing public policy and, depending on the conclusions, craft sound, modernized long-term energy policy. So starting in February of 2022, Simon and I began the process of gathering data, subject matter experts, and other people knowledgeable about life in Hawaii. The work continued for 3 years, and in April of this year, the report was finalized and formally published by GTK for global distribution. So, looking at the report and regarding our methodology, we chose to model the year 2019 to serve as the most recent base case year because it was the last year before COVID skewed global data, economic data. To be clear, when we talk about phasing out the use of fossil fuels, again, we mean using electricity to replace most of the energy historically used to perform economic activity. There would still be some residual activity, which would involve the combustion of renewable liquid fuels such as biofuel, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, but depending on the systems chosen to deliver the economic work. Basically, those fuels that would still be combusted would not have any carbon in their molecular structure. For this exercise, what we did is we collected data from the government sources, converted all fuel types to electrical power equivalents, and factored in relative mechanical efficiencies where possible. For many reasons, the transportation sector will be the most difficult to electrify. The world uses fossil fuels to transport the output of its economic activity. Unlike stationary buildings in our cities and towns that consume electricity delivered by our grid, transportation requires both storage and portability of its energy supply. Liquid fossil fuels have a very high energy density. Put in terms of electricity, they pack a lot of kilowatt hours in a relatively small, easy to handle physical space. And that's a system that's ubiquitous globally today. And replacing that is probably going to, it's going to be resisted. So they've been abundant, affordable, and supported by a global connective infrastructure for 120 years. Excluding electric rail, 96 to 97% of global transportation still relies on fossil fuels. Even considering that electric motors are 3 times more efficient than ICE engines, the energy density difference between liquid fuels and battery storage power is 20 to 1 in favor of gasoline. So replacing liquid fuels while delivering the same amount of work on an economy-wide scale will require not just significantly more new generation, but the construction of new connective infrastructure and the end-use systems that would need to be purchased by commercial and industrial entities. So when we decided to model fossil fuel economy in electrical terms, all energy sources had to be converted to kilowatt hour equivalents. Those equivalents are well-known conversion factors. So, for instance, here you have you can see a table where we took particular fuel types and we have their known BTUs, joules, and kilowatt hour equivalents, and we use this as a way to calculate consumption based on the data that we got from the state. So once we had those conversion references, we calculated the electrical equivalents needed to establish baseline performance metrics by vehicle type and their liquid fuel consumption averages. From there, we could calculate fleet consumption. Using state data for registered vehicles, fuel sales, miles driven, we were able to calculate a reasonable assumption upon which to estimate the electrical power needed to replace those fuels. Again, this was during the base year 2019. Both top-down and bottom-up analyses were attempted. We found that the state needs more granular, purpose-driven data to perform the type of infrastructure planning a bottom-up analysis would support. Again, electrical motors are way more efficient than ICE engines. And when we calculated powering particular vehicles with electric engines, those efficiencies were calculated in. And not that we're going to really be able to go through this graph, but this is out of the report. And if you download it, you will find this in the explanation for how and what it is and where it was derived will be available. So once we had a conversion reference for transportation, we began to calculate the total generation capacity that would be needed to deliver the same economic output. The power consumption for the state in 2019 was 9.2 terawatt hours. And what this chart shows is comparative totals for 3 different years, among which is our reference year. One is 2007 and one is 2023. One thing that we had to suss out of the data was that the state measures consumption at the meter of the customer, which is different than the amount of power that's generated because you have line losses and efficiency losses along the way. What you'll see is like this 9.2 terawatt hour reference. You'll also see a 10.88 terawatt hour reference. The difference between them is one is generation and one is consumption. So when we added in the power required to electrify all transportation, and this includes producing sustainable aviation fuel, we're able to determine the total generation capacity required to phase out all fossil fuels. The total came to 31.2 terawatt hours, or a 339% increase over the generation that was produced in 2019. So with the baseline, so this flow chart shows how we went through and derived that particular figure. Again, that is available in the report. So essentially, once we have our conversion data, the complexity of a functioning economy and considering the energy-driven components, we decided it had to look at various scenarios, and to construct a series of scenarios and knowing there would be no clear technological path to replace fossil fuels at the onset of the project, we decided to use a set of boundary conditions from which all economic scenarios could be derived. And that was within the report, but also to set these as tools that users could use to create their own economies with their own basic assumptions, because we had generation capacity metrics for every kind of technology that you want. So the first 4 scenarios, other than looking at the status quo, were used to make up the boundary conditions. And what they offer is a set of economic energy system building blocks from which to model various iterations of a fossil fuel-free economic environment. In other words, using those conditional metrics, we could create mix and match economic scenarios while retaining the ability to quantify energy generation capacity and consumption metrics and requirements. So this is a chart of all of the scenarios that were presented in the report. The first one we present is the status quo, which is if we just don't do anything. If we take what everything is right now to in 2019, what's the prognosis going from there? After that, we have 4 scenarios which established the boundary conditions, which set out to define generation consumption metrics for all the available generation technologies under certain contained boundaries. Scenarios 5 through 7 examined options that coincided with global models that sought to achieve net zero by 2050. Scenarios 8 through 10 examine economic scenarios that follow non-energy exclusive paradigms, such as a circular economy where you recycle as much as possible, or regenerative agricultural economically, and a wholly unorthodox economy that was conceived by Simon. And for the purposes of this presentation in time, we're only going to go through scenarios 1 through 7. All right, I'm not going to go through. I mean, I think you can see what was going on here. I'm not going to go through explaining what each one of these things are because we're cruising along. What I will do here is that that scenario HX was the status quo, and it basically analyzes the way things are. It asks sustainability questions about the inputs. HA, all transportation is so it's Hawaii scenario A. All transportation is electrified. All ICE engines are replaced with battery power. HB, all ICE transportation. Everybody knows what ICE is: internal combustion engine. Okay, so all ICE engines are replaced, or all ICE transportation is replaced with fuel cell EVs. Hydrogen is assumed to be the hydrogen used is assumed to be electrolytic using green power generation. HC uses biomass for power generation, and all transportation uses biofuels. And HD, all vehicles run on ammonia. This may sound weird to a lot of people, but the global aviation industry, the global maritime industry, they're all looking at ammonia as a hydrogen carrier. It is combustible. It's very, very high octane. It's very widely being discussed as an alternative fuel for diesel, bunker fuel, aviation fuel, and as a hydrogen carrier for fuel cell electric motors. Ammonia doesn't have the same storage and logistical problems that are encountered with hydrogen, either in a gaseous or liquid form. What this is a snapshot, May 4th, 2024, of global maritime traffic. So that's the global economy being moved from one end of the planet to the other. As far as how it affects us in Hawaii, 85 to 90% of what we consume comes that way, comes on boats. The global economy is functionally dependent on liquid fossil fuels, and the question is, can it be replaced? Global energy consumption has increased year over year. The majority of the increases come from within fossil fuels. I mean, renewable energy sources have been growing at an exponential rate, but relative to the amount of energy content, fossil fuels is still growing faster, and it's being consumed faster, which is what that earlier table showed, indicating that there had been less than 1% shift over 25 years. So again, renewables are increasing exponentially due to their previous, relative to their previous deployment, but relative to energy delivered, the increases in fossil fuels are still greater. So referring back to the table I showed you earlier, the comparative ratio between fossil fuel consumption and non-fossil fuel consumption has shifted to the favor of non-fossil by 8.37% over the course of 25 years. So the question is it rational to believe the global economy, the way we're used to living our lives, can be sustained using renewably generated electricity alone? In 2024, solar and wind accounted for approximately 6% of the global 23.6% of energy consumed worldwide. And I'm not going into this because I'm some right-wing, green-bashing, overly negative, so-and-so. I'm really coming from a place of this is urgent, and I'm wondering, and my question is, are we getting what we want? Are we achieving climate mitigation through our current efforts, or is it reasonable to evaluate the aspirations are absolutely rock solid. So the question is is that being delivered? Are we in fact delivering that? All right, so scenario HA. So this is all transportation is electrified and all ice transport is battery powered. So all emissions-free generation technologies are examined to see what could deliver the power required, what system types, and how many of each would be needed to deliver that capacity, and when possible, the footprint involved. The systems modeled included solar and wind with storage, hydro, biomass, biofuel, ocean, geothermal energy, and nuclear. The vehicle fleet in Hawaii is approximately 1.3 million motor vehicles. NREL did a nationwide study to determine fleet-scale charging infrastructure. Using their metrics, and when adjusted for the size of the Hawaiian motor fleet, it was determined that 1.1 million charging points would be needed in Hawaii if the entire fleet was battery powered. The power to run the economy and charge a fleet of that size, if it were powered only by solar panels, would be 41.2 million 450 watt solar panels. Shifting gears. I'm cutting out a lot of that stuff. I think the most important thing has to do, in my mind, with supply chain and the fact that most people don't understand the difference between renewable energy and the systems that transform them into work. Most people think solar panels are renewable energy. They're not. And that all of these systems, 100% of them, start with mining. And, for example, to electrify our economy, a global economy, we need a ton of copper. And so the photo here is a guy is Merlin Mar Johnson, who's the CEO of Fitzroy Minerals. It's a copper and mining company with major operations in Chile. And what he's saying is the largest copper mines in the world, with the exception of Kamoa-Kakula, are mature and in declining. The world's most productive copper mine, Escondida, also in Chile, the only thing they're talking about is how to maintain production. He further said, copper is hard to find. It takes 18 years and $6 to $8 billion to build a new copper mine. In another study, it says that we need 1.75 billion tons of copper to be mined by 2050 and support the expectations of global growth. So the study goes on to say the sheer scale of this expansion is absolutely daunting. It would necessitate construction of 36 new large-scale mines, or 760 small mines, or a 5-fold increase in the output from the top 10 producing mines. And as he said earlier, they don't know if they can even keep doing what they're doing anyhow. So let me move on. So supply chain, lots of problems. The exponential growth that's expected. What we can see is these particular metals, which are essential for building renewable energy systems, need to increase by 5, 10, 15% times in the next 5 years. And then they need to maintain that status for another 20. Question is that realistic? So this is where all the critical raw materials and strategic raw materials come from. You can see China is the is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They also do the lion's share of the processing. So the geopolitics of this is going to become significantly, well, it already is. With regards to solar panels, 75% of the global supply comes out of China for the polysilicon, and 80% of the panels come out of there. So the economic circulatory system is you've got maritime, you've got aviation, you've got rail. Rail is already significantly 45% of it is already electrified. The rest of it is going to be a real challenge.
What was the most unexpected or interesting findings in the Hawaii electrification report?
Well, I would say the scale.
Yeah,
the scale and the rational expectation that we can just do that. That we'll just do that.
Terawatts versus gigawatts. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're looking at to comply with existing law and court settlements in Hawaii. We need to quadruple our generation capacity, and not traditionally. It has to be done with emissions-free generation capacity. But then, where are the systems going to come from that are going to use this electricity?
It's a challenge.
Yeah. All right. So I mean,
Peter.
I don't want to beat the dead horse, and I knew this was not going to be, taking this report was taking 1,000 pounds and trying to fit it into a 5-pound bag, it just. Sorry,
and that's I understand. That's why both Noel and I have put links to the report. There is a lot there, and I think Jamin asked about carbon fee and dividend. How did he put that? He said down here.
Does a carbon fee and dividend approach avoid some of these challenges since it motivates markets to make their own changes versus government action? Or does it precede all of this and these challenges? Or does it precede all of this and these challenges are the work that would follow a transition pressured by a carbon fee?
I don't have an answer to that. What I can say is that we're dealing with human behavior. We're dealing with corporate governance. We're dealing with geopolitics, and we're dealing with a lot of people competing with each other for a dwindling, for a contracting or supply of resources. I'm sure that in a mathematical sense, and Paul can certainly show that in a mathematically modeled sense, what you want to achieve is achievable. If it's whether it's achievable within the practicalities of how we run our government, how we run our communities, what people are willing to do, I don't know.
And that's the focus really of having it bounded by Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is connected to the rest of the planet, but it's still the report shows, what a challenge that would be to totally electrify.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, look, I clearly question the viability of a successful campaign to mitigate global climate change. I look at the data and I see things heading in the exact opposite direction. What I do know is that we got half as much rain as we normally get this year. And in my mind, what I want to do is prepare for what I see coming. I am not Superman. I cannot fix this. This is a predicament. It is going to have an outcome. And I want to engineer one that's the best, most comfortable outcome that I can participate in, because this is not going. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. This is obviously just an immense project, topic and it was sort of a forlorn hope to even do this in half an hour. Thank you very much. And
okay.
Yeah, Peter, thanks. And I do think that if there's there probably will be questions as a result of people taking a look at the report or the summary, and I'm pretty sure we can have some follow-up conversation as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that I took the long road to this, but I couldn't come up with how to explain the report or its implications in, in 15 minutes. This is the existential crisis of civilization, and boiling it down to 10 minutes doesn't do it justice.
I do think that the reality of it, and I think what you're highlighting is the fact that the challenges in front of us are immense, right? I think it'll be important for us to not be paralyzed by the how immense this challenge is, the predicament that you've vividly described here. I think it's also important to note that in the absence of any action altogether, right? I put this in the chat. You wonder how much worse off we would be, right? So clearly, we're not doing enough. We've got to do more, and we've got to pull all the levers to help make it happen. Reduce consumption, increase efficiency, be more realistic about timelines and schedules, and I think we also need to figure out what levers we actually should be pushing.
Yeah, Noel, what I'd like to say is everything you're saying makes sense to me, and I agree, and I want to participate in 100% of that. The thing that comes to my mind is, how do we frame it? Are we doing that because we're saving the world, or are we doing that because we're increasing our self-sufficiency in the midst of a predicament that is under other people's control, and they're not listening to us?
Yeah. No, I hear you. If you're saying Hawaii can't save the planet, I agree with that. We need to model. We need to do the things that we need to do so we can be self-sufficient. We can save the environment here, etc. And in the process, we're inspiring others to do the same.
Maybe, but the rationale for doing this is the same as when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant says,
absolutely,
you got a baby in your seat, the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first, then take care of the baby.
Yeah, we totally understand that. So, and thank you, Paul. We've got to abbreviate because we essentially are out of time. I'm going to share the screen, and you just let me know what you'd like me to continue sharing.
Oh, so I should pull a Brett Cease here. So, what would people like to hear about? I know what we'll do. Since Virginia took all this time to make the slides and has done a heck of a lot of work, I'd like to give her a shout out here. So Virginia, do you mind sharing about media?
Sorry. Sorry. Actually, Noel did these slides. But
okay, well,
they're great.
Shout out to you. Go. Thanks for doing the slides.
Well,
I
will say the reason why all this is happening anyway, right? The media activity, the op-eds, the LTEs that are happening is because we've got leadership in Virginia providing us with information about all these different events that are being published, and also the pathway to contribute. So leading the team, our media team, working with our ghostwriters, inviting people to participate and sign on. I mean, all of that is really important, and it's thanks to you. So all I did was take screenshots and put it on a couple of pages.
Okay. Well, thank you. And people have been great about contributing. We're up to 31 letters and op-eds, just about evenly split for 2025. So that is an accomplishment right there. And in this last month, we had letters and op-eds on a variety of topics, which 6, actually it's 7. We had one today that all mention carbon cashback in some way, but come at it from a different direction. Although we do have 2 that talked about how LNG is not a solution, and how, and Paul's, because for some reason they keep publishing op-eds about how climate change might not be actually happening. And Paul's had enough of that. So he wrote an LTE, which they published, that said, let's just go from here and look at solutions.
I would also like to just offer, Peter, you've got a lot of great stuff to contribute in this space, and happy to facilitate getting some of these things published as well. So thank you.
Oh yeah.
For having me. I knew I was coming in with with a counter narrative to some degree, but we're all neighbors, and we got to. This isn't for me. This is not about concept. This is about how do we take care of ourselves. And I'm thinking very locally and very pragmatically now.
Thanks, Peter.
Sounds
Paul,
good.
do you want to just wrap us up? I think you want to talk about these slides. I think this is
well, I can go quickly. We met with staffers from all the 4 offices. I think they're all on our side. All unlike some people, they to which Virginia was referring, recognize climate change is an issue and something needs to be done. So we're lucky to have that contingent. Thanks to everybody. Many of you can see yourselves in this slide and or the next one. Thanks for participating in the lobby meetings. It was nice to have a good crowd, and hope everybody enjoyed it. For those who weren't able to participate, encourage you to participate in July when CCL has its next round of lobbying. And if that's something that, Peter, is interesting you, love to have you join our team.
And hey, Paul, the June that's going to be in person, right? In DC.
Yeah, it's July, I think, right? Or do I have the wrong date?
July. Okay.
I don't know. Where the heck is that slide? Anyways, I think it's okay. I think we can go through this. Skip this. The only other slide I was gonna hit is Ron put. I think Ron in chat, you put an update. So CCL's interim director Ricky Bradley has been named executive director. So he is now officially in charge. CCL has basically been I think something like a 2-year process has come up with their strategic plan. And thanks, Ron, for putting that in the chat. Part of this, and this goes back to Ruth's comment about relationships, how we view people, how we view ourselves, how we view legislators. CCL is going to work through a program called Bridge, which, see if I can get this thing up, which stands for Building Relationships in Dialogue, Growth, and Engagement. So, as I said, to help both everything from chapter development, working amongst ourselves, all the way up to working with legislators. So more of that information will be coming out in the new year. So I don't know. I'm excited that CCL has kind of come up with a new plan. I think this Bridge initiative, or whatever you want to call it, will be good. It'll help us in our work and help us be more effective, especially during this time of a little bit of polarization and difficulty of people being able to speak to each other. So I think this is rather timely. So that's it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining.
Great. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you, Paul.
Mahalo. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Peter. Take care. Take care, all.
Thank you, Peter.
Aloha. Hui ho. Have a good holiday season, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays.